Let's get another rush to judgment over a deadly police shooting. This is a tragedy. There's no denying that. But Democrats in the media racing to politicize an officer killing 16-year-old Michaela Bryant, who had a knife in her hand and was lunging at another girl. Instead of waiting for all the facts, the White House said this.
She was a child. We're thinking of her friends and family and the communities that are hurting and grieving her loss. We know that police violence disproportionately impacts Black and Latino people in communities, and that Black women and girls, like Black men and boys, experience higher rates of police violence.
And now liberals in the media are trying to downplay the dangers of knife fights. Former Obama White House advisor Valerie Jarrett tweeting, quote, "A police officer immediately decided to shoot her multiple times in order to break up a knife fight." And a CNN guest said this.
And the question we have to ask ourselves, what if it were your daughter? What if it were your child? What if it were a member of your family, your neighbor, in a essentially a teenage fight, a schoolyard fight?
But maybe they should listen to the girl wearing pink, who could have been stabbed.
She came out at you with a knife earlier?
No, she just, that's what the police did.
That lady on the floor?
She came after me.
With a knife?
Yeah, so he got her.
All right, well, first of all, it's not a knife fight when only one person has a knife. That's a butcher shop. All right, so Juan Williams, you're an officer. You get out of the vehicle, you see mayhem. There's a guy that's kicking a girl down to the ground, and another woman lunging at a defenseless woman like this with a sharp blade. You have seconds to react. She doesn't put the knife down when you warn her. What does Officer Juan Williams do to save the lady's life in pink?
Well, I guess I would shoot the gun, not necessarily at somebody, but maybe shoot the gun and maybe, run at the person and try to disarm them. I don't know. I mean,
so wait. You would shoot the gun in the air like a warning shot?
Hopefully to distract or to try to stall or something so I could get, or my partner could get the knife away, I see is what I was saying. But I don't know. I mean, taking someone's life is pretty strong. I don't either. I don't either, Jesse. I mean, Jesse, policing is tough work. But all I'm saying is, I think that woman with the knife is a danger to society. It's certainly a danger to the other person, and we want her to stop and be disarmed. I just also think that killing a human is pretty radical. I don't think that's a good thing. But what I see overall here, you asked me what I see. I see people now using this Ohio case, which is messy, as you and I just discussed, to somehow really try to change the subject, from what happened in Minnesota with the Chauvin guilty verdict, with the George Floyd murder on tape, which is right now prompting a lot of eyes to open in America to the idea that really there is a problem with policing, that what Black people have been saying about police brutality and abuse and lack of accountability for police who engage in that kind of behavior is a real problem in America. So I think a lot of people just want to change that conversation by looking at this case where it's not clear who's in the right and wrong. All that we know is, with some certainty that deadly force had to be used. And a lot of people are saying, gosh, why do we have to do that every time?
I don't know, Greg, if people are trying to change the conversation. This conversation was thrust upon us by really disgusting headlines that made it look like this was a racial execution. And NBC actually got caught deceptively editing the video to make it look like the girl didn't have a knife, and they edited the 911 call. Again, we're back to cleaning up another racially charged story that has been foisted upon us in order to divide us.
The only time the media is interested in looking at the complexities of this stuff is when they are caught out on it, right? No one changed the subject. No one changed the subject. The media embraced this story, and they pushed it to the forefront because they thought it was going a certain way. And then suddenly, when it went another way, people started deleting their tweets, right? But the real and the fact is, Juan says these stories are messy. We've been saying that every time we have 8 or 10 of these a year. We go, each one of these cases is so different, but it's the media that is trying to make them sound exactly the same, and it's not. It is messy. But here's the real outrage. We have lowered our expectations so much that we deem a knife fight as an acceptable part of childhood. If that is true, right, we need to examine these childhoods instead of making disgusting excuses. We saw 2 narratives collide last night. Police shooting a suspect, which the media obsesses over, black-on-black violence, which the media ignores. But you can't have the former without the latter. Police end up at the end of these people's lives because they were called there due to the violence that the media ignores. Cops end up in situations caused by the problems that are dismissed. So they end up there because it's their job to be there at the end. And no, it's not Juan or me that has to rush in and not make this decision. It's that guy. He can't ignore it. He has to show up and risk everything too. Imagine if we honestly tackled the problems at its roots, the piss-poor education, the violence, mental wellness, family structure. What if we examined the variables that end up with the police there at the end of a person's life, rather than dismissing it as a harmless knife fight? Or what Jen Psaki said, those are the variables that contribute to this. Because the more you dismiss the variables that lead to this horrible tragedy, the more it keeps coming. This is not about a police officer. This is about everything that led to that moment. And if you deny that, you are propagating this problem. You are part of the problem.
So, Dakin, Greg makes an excellent point, which he does once in a while, and that is that if you reduce the number of 911 calls coming from these communities, you're going to reduce the chances of these horrific, very messy, officer-involved shootings. Isn't that right?
Right, and people will die if the police are not there for them. You can look at that video one of 2 ways. That was a police officer saving the life of a young black woman. And you know what? When the police aren't there, people die. In another part of Ohio earlier this week, in Cincinnati, a 13-year-old was stabbed to death by another 13-year-old. The girl who died, Naira Givens, she was stabbed by another who's been charged with murder. I'll leave it at that. But what's happened with the left-wing liberal framing of all of this, and this is their modus operandi, that you get ahead of the actual facts and that you or ignore them or lie to make sure that you shape the story to their narrative at all costs. So the narrative is cops are evil, this country is racist, down with America, and then the preferred outcome is that we destroy the nation as it exists right now to rebuild it. It's a craven power grab. Ridiculous if it wasn't so insidious. But I'll point to the verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial, guilty on all counts. Justice for George Floyd's family, certainly. But see, that pointed to the fact that the justice system is not systemically racist, that a cop who oversteps his power and kills another individual will be brought to justice and will be sent to prison for the rest of his life. But see, that didn't fit the left's narrative. So they tried to change the subject with this shooting, this police shooting in Ohio. So what does the left do? The tensions are cooling. You got to bust out that canister of kerosene. You got to keep the lie alive. Yell louder.
Yeah, Martha, one of the things that I found pretty disturbing was watching a lot of African-American pundits look at this video and basically come to the conclusion that we should just let them stab each other. Don't get involved. You know, don't try to break it up. You know, knife fights happen. Let's just let them slash each other to death. That was pretty shocking to hear.
You know, I mean, as Dagan just brought up the other case that she talked about, I looked up the number today of young people under the age of 18 who have been killed in violent events like this. In 2021, there's 441 children that you never hear about. And Al Sharpton does not show up for their funeral. The White House never talks about them. And this police officer intervened in a situation that might have ended like that did. You know, this is a tragedy. Obviously, this young person lost their life. And the bottom line is that we don't know what happened here yet. So this is why I don't think anybody should walk to the podium at the White House and make judgments about what happened. I like to see the kind of responsibility that we used to see when situations like this were dealt with, where you say, look, we see what's on this video, and there's an investigation that's underway, and we are keeping an eye on it, and we're going to find out, we're going to see where it leads. We're going to allow them to do this. I'm watching to see what happens to a man named Ned Pettis. Ned Pettis is the Columbus, Ohio safety officer, and he urged everyone not to rush to judgment. And we all saw what happened to the city manager in Minneapolis, who said the same thing, who said, hold on, everybody, let's just go through the process. Let's see what happened in this situation. Let's go through it play by play. And he lost his job. So I hope Ned Pettis doesn't lose his job for urging a little bit of circumspect, a little bit of caution, a little bit of maturity and responsibility when we look at these situations, to not rush to judgment. Everybody that you just showed, who's already been talking on TV, they all know what happened, I guess. Well, they weren't there, and they don't know exactly what happened. All they know is what they see in that video, and there's a lot more to this story to be told.
Yep, and we'll follow that as it develops. Coming up next.